What if Ned Stark named Jon Snow his true heir in his will, and Robb Stark read it before crossing the neck? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Moat Cailin rises out of the mist like something the world forgot to finish. 3 towers stand jagged and half-eaten against a sky the colour of dirty iron, their stones worn hollow by 10,000 years of northern wind, and the causeway stretches south through the bogs of the neck, like a thread pulled tight between 2 worlds. It is the only road. Whoever holds it holds the passage between the north and everything below, and right now it belongs to Robb Stark, 15 years old, marching his father's banners to a war that has not yet started and cannot be stopped. He is not yet a king. He is not yet a legend. He is a boy at the throat of the realm, and the army behind him stretches back into the neck as far as the eye can follow. Grey wind moves along the causeway behind him, big as a pony now and quiet as fog. The direwolf's yellow eyes sweep the marshes without concern. He has been restless since Winterfell, stopping sometimes to stare north at nothing Robb can see. And Robb has learned not to think too hard about what grey wind can smell on the wind that he cannot. The wolf is the only one of them who seems unbothered by what lies ahead. The council is already in session in the broken shadow of the gatehouse tower. Catelyn Stark stands at the edge of a rough map, scratched in the dirt, her arms folded, her jaw set. At 34, she holds herself like a Tully, straight-backed and composed, a woman accustomed to making decisions that other people will have to carry. She has ridden hard from the Riverlands with the Blackfish at her side, and the road has not softened her. Beside her, Brynden Tully leans against the crumbling wall with the patience of a man who has stood in more war councils than he can count. The Blackfish is 58 years old and has been a soldier for longer than Robb has been alive. He watches the map with the focused stillness of a man who already knows what it says and is waiting for everyone else to catch up. The argument is the same argument it has always been. Tywin Lannister holds the east, the Green Fork, and the main road. 30,000 men dug in and waiting for a northern boy to make a mistake. Jaime Lannister holds the west, River Run besieged, Catelyn's family locked behind those walls, while the Lannister soldiers strip the Tully lands bare. March at Tywin, and they might shatter the old lion's spine, but River Run starves while they do it. March at Jaime, and they need to cross the Twins first, which means Walder Frey and the price he will ask for that crossing. The Blackfish says they can afford the price. Catelyn is less certain. Robb watches them both and says nothing, because he has known for 100 miles that there is no answer here that does not cost something. It is the raven that stops the argument. One of Robb's men comes across the causeway at a jog with a sealed cylinder in his fist. A rider from Winterfell, he says. Maester Luwin sent it separately from the regular dispatches, marked urgent, 2 days behind them on the road. Robb takes it. The outer seal is Luwin's, black wax, the maester's mark pressed clean and careful. Inside is a letter in Luwin's handwriting, short and precise. My lord, among your father's personal effects, I have found a sealed document written in Lord Eddard's own hand and addressed to you. I send it to you without reading it. It is not my place to know what it says. Beneath the letter, folded once, is the document itself. The wax is grey, pressed with the stamp of House Stark, his father's seal. Robb looks at it for a moment. Then he says, "Give me a moment," and no one argues with him. He carries both pieces into the shadow of the gatehouse tower, sits down on a block of fallen stone, and breaks his father's seal. Ned Stark's handwriting is plain and even, every letter formed without ornament, the pressure of the quill steady from the first word to the last. It is the handwriting of a man who believed that a thing said clearly was said well, and who had nothing left to add beyond what the words themselves carried. Robb reads. He reads it twice. He sits with the parchment in his hands for a long time after that. The mist shifts through the bogs below. Somewhere out in the reeds, a bird calls once and goes quiet. Grey Wind is at the foot of the steps, very still, watching him. The will names Jon Snow as Ned Stark's true heir. Not Robb, not Bran, not Rickon. Jon the bastard, the one with the dark hair and the grey eyes and the Stark face, the one who grew up at the table and was never quite settled at it, who left for the wall before anyone thought to ask him to. Ned Stark has pressed his seal to this document and called Jon the truest blood of his blood and the rightful heir to Winterfell and all that the name Stark carries in the north. At the back of the folded will, sealed separately, there is a second piece of parchment with a name written on the front in Ned's hand, Jon Snow. Robb turns it over once in his fingers and then sets it down beside him on the stone. That one is not his to open. Whatever his father wrote inside it, Jon deserves to read it first. He goes back to the council. Catelyn reads his face before he says a word. She has always been able to do that, and he wishes right now that she couldn't. He hands her the will. He watches her read it. He watches the colour leave her face, not from grief, but from something colder and harder underneath. No, she says, when she sets it down. A Snow is not a Stark. He has father's seal. Those are father's words. Your father was in the black cells when he wrote this, alone, facing death, waiting for the axe. Men write things in that condition that they would never set to paper otherwise. She does not reach for the document again. This changes nothing, Robb. It changes everything. It changes nothing you can act on. Jon is at the wall. He has taken his vows. He cannot hold land, he cannot inherit, and he cannot be named to anything while he is oath-sworn. And even if none of that were true, Bran comes before him. Rickon after Bran. Your sisters after Rickon. A bastard cannot inherit without a king to legitimize him, and your father is gone. She says it the way she says most things, with a precision that does not leave space for disagreement. Robb knows the words are correct. He knows the legal ground she is standing on. Bran needs Winterfell to come home to, she says. Quieter now. Rickon needs it. Sansa and Arya need it. Whatever your father intended, those children have not stopped being your father's children. Robb looks at her for a moment and does not answer. Brynden Tully hands the will back to Robb without comment, then stands with his arms folded and his eyes on the mist. Ned Stark was the most clear-headed man I ever knew in my life, he says at last. He did not do anything carelessly, not this. He glances at Catelyn, not without sympathy. Whether we like what he wrote is a separate question from whether he meant it. He meant it. Catelyn walks to the edge of the causeway. Her back is straight. She does not look at either of them. Robb folds the will and puts it inside his coat, against his chest. He tucks Jon's sealed letter carefully beside it. He stands there for a moment, looking south down the road, at the grey water and the mud, and the long distance between here and everything that has to happen before any of this means anything at all. He makes two decisions. The first is that he says nothing to the lords tonight. The Great Jon does not need to know. Rose Bolton does not need to know. They are marching south to win a war, and giving them a new argument will not help them win it. The will stays inside his coat until he knows what to do with it. The second is that Jon's letter leaves for Castle Black by Raven in the morning. His father sealed it for Jon. Jon will have it. We march at first light, he tells the council. Grey wind settles against his heel, and the wolf's yellow eyes are steady on the road south. The lords disperse into the dusk. Catelyn is the last to leave. She does not speak to him before she goes. Robb stands at the edge of the causeway alone for a long time, watching the mist close over the ruins until he cannot make out the towers from the sky. He thinks about his father in the dark, alone, a guardsman outside the door, and the axe already decided, setting that quill to parchment with a steady hand. A man doesn't write that way in despair. A man doesn't write that way in confusion or in grief. A man writes that way when he is keeping a promise. The morning breaks grey and cold over the neck. Robb does not sleep well. He lies in his tent in the dark before dawn, listening to the camp stir around him, the distant sound of horses being readied and fires being built up, and men moving through the mist with the restless energy of soldiers who have been held in one place too long. He lies there, and he thinks about the parchment tucked inside his coat, and after a while he gives up on sleep and gets up and sends his man to bring the lords. They gather in the gatehouse tower as the sun comes up behind the clouds, a pale disk that gives light without warmth. The great Yon Umber arrives first, ducking through the doorway without checking his height and filling the narrow space with the sheer size of him. He is 41 years old and built like something out of the old stories, broad-shouldered and loud, with a red-brown beard and a voice that carries across 3 camps when he is not trying. He is also the most reliably loyal man Robb has, which has more to do with grey wind than with anything Robb has earned on his own. The great Jon challenged Robb's authority when the host first gathered, and grey wind took 2 of his fingers for it, and the great Jon stood there bleeding and laughing, and decided this was the sign of a lord worth following. The logic of that is not complicated, if you know the great Jon. Rose Bolton arrives a moment behind him, quiet as a man stepping around water on a floor. He finds a place along the far wall, and stands there without being invited to stand there. His hands folded at his back, his pale eyes moving over the room in the way they always move over everything, taking stock the way a merchant takes stock of an unfamiliar shop. He is 36, lean and unhurried, and he has the habit of making himself easy to overlook in a room, which is not an accident. Brynden Tully takes up his position near the door with his arms folded, the posture of a soldier who is ready for what comes next and has learned not to lean. Catelyn sits to one side on a piece of fallen stone, apart from the others, her hands in her lap. She has not spoken to Robb since the night before. He does not expect that to change. When they are all present, Robb speaks. "My father left a will," he says. "Maester Luwin found it at Winterfell after he was taken south, in my father's private solar, sealed and addressed to me. I read it yesterday." He pauses. "It names an heir. The heir it names is not me." The room goes quiet. Outside, the camp carries on without them. A horse stamps somewhere. A man calls something in the distance, and another answers, and the ordinary noise of 10,000 soldiers waking up continues without pausing for what is being said inside the ruins. "Who?" says the Great Jon. "I'm not ready to say." The Great Jon's expression goes through several things in rapid order. He is not a man who has much practice sitting with questions he wants answers to, and the visible evidence of that is all over his face. "You're going to make us wait," he says. "For now. When I'm ready to tell you, I will tell you to your face, before you hear it from anyone else. That's a promise." Robb looks around the room, at the Blackfish, at Catelyn, at Rose Bolton, standing still against the wall. "What I need from each of you right now is not the name. What I need is that we march south and we fight this war, and we get justice for my father, and we bring my sisters home. Whatever my father put in that document is a matter for after the fighting is done, not before. And if this heir doesn't agree with that, the Blackfish says from the door. He says it plainly, without judgment, the way he says most things. Then we'll discuss it when we come to it. The Great John pulls at his beard. He is thinking, which in the Great John is a process that involves his entire body. He looks at Robb, then at Grey Wind, who has padded into the tower and settled himself in the corner with the patient weight of an animal that has already decided how every argument in this room will end. The Great John's right hand is missing 2 fingers, and the remaining 3 flex briefly before he stills them. "All right," he says. Ned Stark wrote it down and put his seal to it. Man like Ned Stark doesn't do that without knowing exactly what he's asking. I can wait. He points a finger at Robb, one of the intact ones. But when you tell me to my face, not through someone else's mouth. I've earned that. You have, Robb says. You have my word. That is the end of the council. Robb does not invite further discussion, and the lords do not offer it. They file out into the grey morning, one by one. The Great John with a nod that is almost respectful, the Blackfish with nothing at all, Catelyn last among those who go without speaking first. The lords who were not called to this meeting do not know it happened, and for now that is exactly as it should be. Roose Bolton goes out ahead of Catelyn, the same unhurried pace he came in with. Robb watches him through the tower's broken doorway, moving across the causeway, with the steadiness of a man on a walk he has always expected to take. At a distance, one of his own men moves to intercept him with something to report. Roose Bolton listens without stopping, says 3 or 4 words in return, and keeps walking. He does not look back at the tower. He has not looked back at the tower once since he left it. Robb goes to his tent and writes the letter. He is not a natural writer. He presses too hard, and the ink blots at the edges, and his letters run larger than they should. He writes a first draft that goes on for half a page and says too many things, and he crosses it out. The second draft is short. Father left something for you. Read it before you reply to me. I need to know you're all right. He folds it around the inner letter, the one Ned sealed for John, and wraps the whole thing in oilcloth against the weather, and carries it to the rookery himself. The man at the rookery asks if it is urgent. Robb says it is. The Raven goes north, while Robb stands outside and watches. It climbs out of the camp in a dark arc, and catches the upper wind, and is gone over the neck before he has fully exhaled. A raven flies 1,000 miles in 3 days if the wind is behind it, and the road from Moat Cailin to Castle Black runs close to straight. John will have it before the week is out. Whatever the letter does to him when he reads it, at least he will know that Ned thought of him. At the end, with everything, Ned thought of him. Robb gives the order to march. The host comes south through the neck in long columns, the road narrow and the bogs pressing in on either side, the air thick with marsh smell and cold. The Crannogmen are ahead of them on the safe paths, appearing out of the reed beds without noise and disappearing into them the same way. They are short, the people of the neck, shorter than Southron men, and they move through the mire the way the marsh itself moves, finding the low ground, going where the water goes, making no more noise about it than the reeds do. They have been guiding Stark armies through this country for as long as there have been Stark armies, and they do it now without being asked, because this is the arrangement, and it has always been the arrangement. Grey Wind goes where Robb goes, mud-stained to the hocks and completely indifferent to it. The direwolf's yellow eyes take in the reed beds without interest and find nothing worth noting, which is the best possible news. Catelyn rides behind Robb at a distance that communicates exactly how much she is choosing not to speak to him, with Brynden Tully at her side. Robb does not force it. They have a long road ahead. It is late afternoon when Robb notices the Crannog man, who is not with the others. He is standing at the road's edge in the reeds, small and still as a stump, watching the column pass with an attention that is different from curiosity. He is armed the way Crannogmen arm themselves, with a light spear and a net at his hip and not much else visible, and his clothing is the grey-green of still water. He does not move when Robb looks at him. He does not look away. Robb slows his horse. "You want something," he says. The Crannog man waits for a moment with the patience of the neck itself. Then he says, "My lord sends his respects. He says you will want to speak with him before you go south." He pauses. He says he knows about the seal. He does not say which seal. He does not need to. Robb sits on his horse in the middle of the column and holds that very still for a moment, while the army moves around him, like a river around a stone. "Tell your lord," Robb says, "that I will come." The Crannog man nods once and steps back into the reeds, and then there is nothing at the road's edge but the reeds themselves. Castle Black sits in the lee of the wall and looks like something that has been slowly losing an argument with the cold for 8,000 years. The ice towers above it on the north side, 700 feet of grey-white that catches the cloud light and reflects it back as something colder and older, and the men who live at its foot spend their days in its shadow, whether they mean to or not. Jon Snow has been here long enough that he no longer looks up at the wall unless he has a reason. It is simply where he is now. It is his world. He goes about his duties the way he has learned to go about everything at Castle Black, with the kind of quiet that passes for contentment if you do not look at it too closely. He is the Lord Commander's steward. He carries dispatches and tends fires and keeps track of the ravens and sets out the meals and does a dozen other things that are not the wall and not the fighting that the wall is supposed to be about. He is 15 years old, and he has given his life to this. And on most days, that feels like the right thing to have done. Samwell Tarly is 15 too. He arrived at Castle Black terrified of nearly everything, and has spent the month since arriving finding ways to be useful that do not require him to be unafraid. Because fear is the one thing Sam cannot seem to shake, no matter how long he stands in it. He is round and cautious on his feet, and reads more than anyone else at Castle Black, and he brings Jon food from the kitchen and asks questions Jon had not thought to ask, and he is the best friend Jon has here by a margin that is not close. Ghost goes where Jon goes. The direwolf is white from nose to tail, and he does not make sounds. He has never made sounds. He moves through the fortress the way the cold moves, filling spaces without announcing himself, and the other men make way for him without understanding why. Jon knows why. Ghost moves like something that has already decided what it is, and that quality puts people off. The wolf has been sitting on top of things lately and looking north into the dark above the wall, and Jon does not know what he is looking at. Benjen Stark has been gone since early in the year. The watch marked him overdue and then stopped marking him, because there is a category of men at Castle Black who do not come back, and that is the category he is in now. Jon has not put him in that category. He is aware that this makes him foolish, and he does not care. The Raven arrives in the afternoon of a cold, clear day, flying in from the King's Road relay stations with a dispatch from the south. The man at the rookery takes it to Maester Aemon, as all ravens go to Maester Aemon first, and Maester Aemon comes to find Jon himself in the yard. The old man makes his way across the yard with the care of someone who has memorized every uneven stone, both hands slightly out from his sides, and finds John by the sound of a whetstone on steel. "There is a letter for you," he says. "It came with the South dispatch." He holds it out. "The outer seal is marked for you. The inner seal I recognized." John takes the letter. Meister Aemon's grip on it is light and dry. "The stamp," John says, "a grey direwolf." A pause. "I thought you should have it yourself, rather than hear about it from the rookery man." John thanks him. Aemon does not linger. He turns and makes his way back across the yard with the same economy, and John watches him go, and then he looks at the letter in his hands. Sam appears at his shoulder. "From Robb?" he asks. "Yes." John holds up the outer layer, which is Robb's handwriting on the exterior, and then looks at the sealed inner document folded inside it. "And from my father." Sam does not say anything to that. He steps back and gives John the corner of the yard behind the wood stack, where the wind is blocked on two sides, and Ghost drifts over and sits down at John's feet. And John reads. He reads the outer letter first. Robb's handwriting is familiar and imprecise, pressed too hard into the page. "Father left something for you. Read it before you reply to me. I need to know you're all right." Then John opens the inner seal. His father's handwriting is different from Robb's, the way still water is different from running water. It does not hurry. Every letter is formed with the same deliberate care, and the words are chosen with the same care, and the whole of it together has the weight of something that has been held inside for a very long time, and is only now being set down. The first thing it says is that John is named heir to Winterfell. John reads that twice. He reads it the way you read something that does not make sense the first time, and does not make more sense the second time, but demands you keep going anyway. He is the bastard. He is the one with no place at the table. He is the one who came to the wall, because the wall was the place that takes the men who have nowhere else. He reads it twice. The second thing it says is worse, or larger. John does not have the right word for it yet. He reads the second part 4 times. Each time the world does something different, and he does not know what to do with it. By the time he puts the letter down, Ghost is pressed against his leg with his whole warm weight, and Sam is watching from across the yard with the expression of a person who has something to say, and is deciding not to say it. "John." Sam's voice is careful. "Are you all right?" "No," John says, and then, after a moment, "Yes. I don't know." He folds the letter very carefully and puts it inside his jacket. He goes to see Meister Aemon that evening, when the day's duties are done. He does not take the letter. He is not ready to say what it contains, not until he understands it himself. What he brings Aemon is only the question he cannot answer alone. Can a man leave the night's watch? Aemon is sitting with his hands folded in a stone room that smells of pine and old books, and something beneath that, something medicinal, the smell of a very old body that has been kept going through stubbornness and will. 2 candles, a fire that is doing its best. The old man listens to the question without moving. "What does the oath say?" Aemon asks. John recites it. "Night gathers, and now my watch begins. It shall not end until my death." "There is your answer," Aemon says. "The oath does not provide a door. There is no authority that can open it. There is no circumstance the oath recognizes except death." He folds his hands tighter. "That is the watch you swore." John looks at the fire. "You gave up a throne to take it." "I gave up a place in a succession," Aemon says. "There were crowns I turned away from before I swore." He pauses. "I made my choice. long ago. I chose this life, and I do not know whether it was wisdom or weakness, because I have never stood far enough away from it to see it clearly. The fire pops. I will not tell you what to choose. Each man must answer that himself. Do you regret it? The old man is quiet for a long time. I regret the things I did not know the cost of when I chose, he says at last. I do not know if that is regret or simply the condition of being alive. He turns his face toward John with the precision of a blind man who has learned to find people by sound and breath. Go sleep. Write your letter in the morning when your head is clear. John sleeps. He writes the letter in the morning. He writes it twice. The first draft says too much, and the second draft says just enough. He cannot come south. He is sworn, and the oath is clear, and the oath is what it is. He tells Robb to use the will as he sees fit, and to do what has to be done. But at the end he asks one question. Is there something more to what the will contains? Because the second part of the letter, the part that Ned wrote for John's eyes, is something John has read 4 times, and each time it does something to the shape of the world that he cannot quite account for. He wants to know if Robb knows about it too. He sends it north with the morning raven. North to south, south to north, words flying in both directions between 2 brothers who cannot yet speak plainly. The next evening, Sam finds him on the south face of the wall, sitting on the edge with his legs hanging over the dark, looking out over the road that runs down into the realm below. Ghost is pressed against his side, with his muzzle on John's knee. "Are you all right?" Sam asks. John considers the question honestly. "My father left me something I don't know how to carry." Sam sits down beside him on the edge, their shoulders close, and says nothing more, because Sam knows when nothing more is what is needed. The wind comes off the ice at their backs. The road below disappears into the dark. Ghost does not move. The twins sit astride the green fork, like a landowner who never lets you forget whose property you are crossing. 2 towers, 2 keeps, 1 bridge, and whatever Walder Frey decides he wants this week. The towers are grey stone and old, and the Frey banners hang from them in the damp morning air. Blue towers painted on grey, and the bridge between them is the only practical crossing of the Green Fork for 50 miles in either direction. This is the fact that has made the Froys rich. This is the fact that Catelyn carries with her when she rides out ahead of the army with Brynden Tully at her side. She does not like what she is riding toward. She has not liked it since Robb told her what it would require. But the war is the war, and the bridge is the bridge, and she has spent enough years as Ned Stark's wife to know that you do not always have the luxury of choosing the allies you would prefer. Walder Frey receives them in his great hall, with the full weight of the Frey family deployed around him. He sits in a massive chair at the head of the room, old as a siege and twice as stubborn, 90 years worn into his face and frame without the slightest appearance of softening. He is a small man, under all that age, and he watches them enter the hall with pale, watery eyes that miss nothing. The room is full of his blood. Sons, daughters, grandsons, granddaughters, great-grandchildren, spouses, and half the crossing's garrison, besides, filling the benches and the galleries, and every available ledge like a family that has been multiplying since before anyone currently living was born. The 2 towers are visible through the hall's narrow windows, framing the bridge, and the bridge frames the Green Fork, and the Green Fork frames everything south of here. Catelyn notes all of this, as she was raised to note such things. "Lady Stark," Walder says, before she has been offered a seat. He says it the way he says most things, with a dry edge that is not quite insolence, and not quite courtesy. "You've come about the bridge." "I have, my lord." "Thought so." He waves one of his sons out of a chair and settles himself more deeply into his own. "Nobody comes to the twins unless they want the bridge. I've been lord of the crossing since before your grandfather was born, and it never changes." He looks her over, the way a merchant looks over a horse. "So, what's it worth to the young wolf?" Catelyn lays it out plainly, because Walder Frey is a man who respects plain speaking and nothing else. The northern host needs passage. They march south to relieve River Run and bring justice for Eddard Stark. They are asking for the use of the crossing, safe passage for their horses and wagons and men, and provisions for the road. Walder listens without expression. Then he says, "I've had promises of that sort from every lord who ever needed me. Fine words and nothing to show for them after. Robb Stark is what, 15? His father's gone. What guarantee does an old man have that there's anything at the end of this for House Frey? What would satisfy you, my lord?" He smiles at that, and the smile is neither friendly nor unfriendly. It is simply the smile of a man who has been waiting for that question for a very long time. "A Frey bride for your son. He takes one of my daughters or granddaughters for his lady wife, and gives me a Stark grandchild to carry the Frey name up the King's Road, and a place for one of my sons at Robb's side. As a ward, let's say. A hostage for good faith." He folds his hands on his lap. "That's what the bridge is worth." Catelyn looks at him for a long moment. The great hall is very quiet, which is impressive given how many people are in it. She thinks about the will inside Robb's coat. She thinks about Jon Snow and whatever that document means for Robb's line of succession. She thinks about the fact that if Jon is already named Robb's heir, then Robb's own children matter slightly less to the equation of dynasties than they would otherwise, which means this marriage pact carries somewhat less weight as a dynasty-building move than Walder imagines. She also thinks that none of this changes the strategic reality in front of her, which is that the bridge is the bridge, and the army cannot march south without it. "Agreed," she says, "on Robb's behalf." Brynden Tully stands behind her and says nothing. He has been standing that way the whole time, arms folded, watching Walder Frey the way a man watches a dog that has been known to bite. Walder nods, slow and satisfied. "Grand. We'll work out the details of the match after the war." He says it as if the war is already finished and the outcome already settled, which is either confidence or contempt, and Catelyn suspects it is both. "I'll have my people see your horses and your men across." The army crosses the Green Fork the following morning in long columns, the men and horses moving over the bridge in waves from before dawn until the sun is halfway up the sky. Robb rides near the vanguard, grey wind padding beside his horse, and he does not look up at Walder Frey's towers as he passes beneath them. He does not need to. He can feel the old man watching from somewhere above, taking note of every banner and every horse and every wagon, counting the size of the host he has just let across his bridge and deciding how much that is worth to him. It is a large army. Walder Frey has bet it will win. South of the Twins the land begins to change, the marshes thinning and the road firming underfoot, and the air takes on the quality of a place that knows what it is and is not the neck anymore. Camp is made late in the day, beside a tributary stream, the supply wagons drawn up in line, the watch set. The fires come up one by one as the sky darkens. It is in that grey hour, with the camp settling into its evening noise, that the Crannogman finds Robb. He is small, as Crannogmen are small, and he has the grey-green colouring of a man who has spent his whole life in the reed beds. He approaches the edge of Robb's camp from the south, not from the way the army came, and the picket line lets him through after a look at his marsh-stained clothing and the spear he is carrying. He walks straight to Robb's fire and waits. "You sent word before," Robb says. "In the neck." "My lord sent the first message," the crannogman says. Now he sends the path. He holds out a strip of bark with marks scratched on it. Not a map exactly, but something with a pattern to it, the kind of navigational record crannogmen use for territory that does not show the same way twice. He asks that you come tomorrow. 2 men at most. He will have word left for you at the first marked tree. A pause. He says it concerns the grey seal, and what it means. Robb takes the bark. He stares at it for a moment without speaking. Catelyn has appeared beside the fire, because Catelyn appears when things are being decided, even when she has not been sent for, which is one of the things Robb has always known about her. She reads the situation before he speaks. "Who is this man?" she says. "Who is Howland Reed to you?" Robb turns to face her. "He was my father's closest companion. He was at the Tower of Joy when my father made whatever promise he made before he brought Jon home. He has kept my father's secret for 15 years without being asked to, without once going to anyone else with it." He holds her gaze. He has a copy of the will. He sent word that he knows what it means. He folds the bark and puts it in his pocket. "I need to hear what he has to say." "You know nothing about this man," she says. "Not personally. Not to trust him. I know what my father trusted him with." He looks at the blackfish, who is standing at the edge of the firelight with his arms folded, and his expression, the expression of a man who has already decided where he lands on this question. "I'll take Brynden and one other. We go tomorrow at first light, and we're back before midday. The host holds here." Catelyn opens her mouth and closes it again. It is not surrender. It is the face of a woman who knows when she is outvoted and is recording it for the accounting she will do later. "Be careful," she says at last, which is the only version of agreement she has available to her tonight. Robb nods. He looks out into the dark beyond the fire, in the direction the crannogman came from, and whatever is in his face in that moment is not quite fear, and not quite hope. It is something older and harder that does not have a simple name. The path into the marsh is not what Robb expects. He expects a path. What the crannogmen give him is a series of marks on standing reeds and stones and patches of firmer ground, a sequence of decisions rather than a road, and the men who lead him through it know it the way certain people know their own houses in the dark. The bog on either side of each footstep looks exactly like the bog 2 feet away, and Robb watches the crannogmen ahead of him and trusts that the ground beneath his horse's hooves is ground. And after a while, he stops trying to memorize the way, because there is nothing to memorize. The sound of the army disappears behind him. Then the sound of the Twins River disappears. There is only the marsh, the birds somewhere in the reeds, and the small noises of men and horses moving carefully through water. Catelyn catches up to them at the first crossing. Robb hears her horse behind him, and doesn't turn around because he already knows. Brynden Tully is with her, which is not surprising. Brynden would not let her ride into a marsh alone, and Catelyn would not stay behind if there was anything she thought she needed to know. She falls into the company without being invited, and without apologizing for it, and Robb says nothing. He has known his mother long enough to choose his battles. They reach Greywater Watch an hour into the morning. It appears out of the mist, the way the crannogmen appear and disappear, as if it has been standing there the whole time and is simply choosing to be visible now. A castle on a floating island, dark wooden walls and low towers set in the middle of a wide reed bed, connected to the world by a dock and a narrow walkway of planked wood. Robb looks at it and thinks that this is the fortress no one has ever taken, because no one has ever been able to find it twice. Two young people stand on the dock, a girl of about 17 and a boy a year or two younger, both with the grey-green colouring of the neck, both watching the new arrivals without alarm. The girl holds a spear loosely in one hand. The boy stands very still and looks at Robb with eyes that are doing something more than looking. "Mira Reed," the girl says, "and Jojen, our father is waiting inside." Inside the castle's main hall, Howland Reed sits behind a low table with his hands folded on it, and he rises when Robber enters. He is a small man, a Cranagman size, and there is something about his face that is difficult to place in time, as if the neck has kept him the way it keeps everything it wants to hold. He was Ned Stark's friend when Ned Stark was a young man, and he looks at Robb now with the expression of someone who sees the father in the son. "My lord," he says, "thank you for coming." He has a document on the table. It is sealed with grey wax and carries the direwolf of House Stark, the same seal Robb broke in the gatehouse tower, the same seal Ned pressed before he left Winterfell for King's Landing. Robb looks at it and says nothing. "He gave it to me before he rode south," Howland says. "He said, 'Keep this safe.' He said, 'If I do not come back, bring it to my son Robb and tell him what it means.'" He pauses. He was very specific about that. If he did not come back. He looks down at the document for a moment. He did not come back. Howland pushes the copy of the will across the table. Robb does not reach for it yet. "Tell me what it means," he says. So Howland tells it. He tells it the way men tell things they have carried for a long time, plainly and without ornament, because the ornament would be dishonest, and because the thing itself is enough. He tells it from the beginning, which means from the end of the war, 283 AC, the road to the Tower of Joy in Dawn. Ned Stark and 6 companions rode to that tower, with the war already won and the king already crowned. They found 3 Kingsguard standing before the door, the finest knights alive, and among them Sir Arthur Dane of the Kingsguard, the Sword of the Morning, the best swordsman in the realm. Ned's party fought them. When the fighting was over, 7 men had become 2, and the 2 who remained were Ned Stark and Howland Reed. Inside the tower was Lyanna Stark. She was in a bed of blood, burning with fever, the birth already done. The boy was alive. She was not going to be. Ned went to her side, and she took his hand, and she said words that Howland did not hear all of, and did not try to hear all of, because they were not for him. What he heard was the end of them. "Promise me, Ned." And Ned promised. He came back out of that room with the boy in his arms, and he looked at Howland, and Howland looked at him, and neither of them said what had just happened, because it was already understood. "What did happen?" Robb says. He asks it quietly, because some part of him already knows what Howland is going to say, and needs to hear it said aloud to make it real. Howland Reed looks at him steadily. "Prince Rhaegar Targaryen was Jon's father," he says. "He annulled his marriage to Elia Martell and wed your Aunt Lyanna before a heart tree. It was done in secret. The only witnesses were your father and me, and whatever gods live in Weirwood." He does not soften it or frame it with apologies. "Jon Snow is not your father's bastard. He is Rhaegar Targaryen's true-born son. His name is Aegon Targaryen." The hall is very quiet. The marsh sounds come in through the gaps in the walls, the birds and the water, the ordinary noise of the neck going about its business. Catelyn is standing behind Robb's left shoulder. He knows from the quality of her silence that she has heard every word and is deciding what to do with them. He does not turn to look at her. He cannot look at her right now. The sound she makes when she finally moves is not a word. She walks to the door, and her steps are even and deliberate, and her back is straight, and her face, when she passes, is the face of a woman who has built a wall around herself and is standing behind it. She stops in the doorway. She turns back. "So the boy I hated for stealing my husband's name," she says, "the son of the man who stole my husband's war." She goes out. Brynden Tully follows her without a word, giving Robb one brief look as he passes that says everything about what he is going to spend the next hour doing and nothing about how he feels about it. Robb stands alone with Howland Reed in the hall of a castle that cannot be found. He asks the only question he can ask right now. Does John know? He has the inner letter, Howland says. He knows what it says. Whether he has accepted what it means is another thing. There is a difference between reading a thing and believing it. Robb nods. He stands at the window that looks out over the reed beds for a while, without speaking. The mist is still in the marsh, and the water beneath it is dark, and Greywater Watch floats on all of it with the patience of something that has always been here, and will still be here after every army has passed through. "Will you ride south with us?" he asks. "I will," Howland says. "I have waited 15 years to give this testimony. I would like to give it to more than one person before I die." Robb rides back to the camp before midday. He writes the Raven while the horse is being cooled down, using the camp table outside his tent in his own hand that presses too hard and blots at the edges. He writes, "Howland Reed has confirmed it. Every word your father wrote is true. You are Rhaegar Targaryen's son. You do not need my father's will. You never needed it. You were always more than what they called you." He sends it north to Castle Black, and does not read it over before it goes. Because if he reads it over, he will change it again, and the thing will never go at all. Then he sits for a long time, with his hands flat on the empty table, thinking about a boy with dark hair and grey eyes who has been living under the wrong name his whole life, and about a promise a dying woman made her brother extract in a room full of blood while Howland Reed stood outside the door. Ned kept it. He kept it for 15 years. He kept it until the Black Cells and the Grey Keep and the Axe, and then he put it in a document and sent it south. Now it is Robb's to keep. There are 2 Lannister armies in the Riverlands, and they are positioned to bleed any force that comes against either one of them. This is the problem Robb Stark lays out to his council in a barn 3 miles west of the Green Fork, with the candles burning low and the maps scratched in charcoal on the planking. The Blackfish traces the lines. Tywin holds the east with the bulk of his force, 30,000 men dug in between the ford and the road, waiting for a battle on ground of his choosing. Jaime sits west of here with his siege lines around River Run, his back to the river, and his front to the open land. He has the Tully seat locked up and bleeding. Between the 2 of them, they have covered both roads south. "If we hit Tywin, Jaime does not move," the Blackfish says. "He lets us spend ourselves on the ford and keeps River Run. If we hit Jaime, Tywin marches on us from the east and catches us against the walls. Unless we don't give him time," Robb says. The Blackfish looks at him for a moment. Then he nods. Once, slowly, the way men nod when a thing is exactly right and also exactly dangerous. Robb takes the cavalry. 2,000 horse, the northern riders stripped of their supply trains, moving fast and light. They ride west before dawn along the river road. Grey wind, out ahead of them in the dark. The wolf running hard and quiet the way he always runs. Behind them, Rose Bolton takes the northern foot down to the ford of the Green Fork. The foot crosses the ford at first light. Rose drives them into the Lannister position, at the ford in good order, his banners moving up the bank in formation. Tywin's men hold the far side, and the fighting at the water's edge is hard and ugly. Men going down in the shallows with the current, pulling at them, and the arrows coming from the opposite bank. Rose manages his flanks well, keeps the pressure on, keeps Tywin's attention fixed on the crossing. He does not commit to the push that would decide it. He knows where the decision of this battle is coming from, and it is not coming from this side of the river. Meanwhile, west in the dark of the trees, Robb is already inside the Whispering Wood. The forest is deep and old and very dark when the moon is behind the clouds, and it is behind the clouds most of the night. Robb's outriders have been circling the Lannister camp around River Run for 3 hours, moving in sections, threading through the timber on trails the local men know, spreading the noose. The Lannister position is built for a siege, not a battle behind the lines. The men are tired, and their campfires are burning down. Jaime's cavalry are hobbled for the night. The noose closes at the middle of the night. Robb's riders come in from every direction at once, and the sound of it fills the Whispering Wood with the kind of noise that empties men's chests of everything that was in them. Horses, screaming men. The thump of cavalry hitting infantry at the gallop. Grey Wind is in the middle of it, a pale white shape in the dark that the horses shy from and the men break away from, and the northern riders follow the wolf through the gaps he opens before them. Shields splinter. Men scream. The northern riders drive through the camp in 3 lines, each line following the one before it. And where they have been, there is wreckage and fire, and the noise of a thing that is over. The horses that Grey Wind has scattered run blind through the tents and bring them down. The men who had been sleeping wake into chaos and do not find their spears in time. The Lannister camp breaks in the first hour. It breaks the way things break when the panic reaches the part of an army that was never going to stand anyway. The rear elements, and the baggage men and the servants, and that breaking pulls at the fighting men who were going to hold, and then there is no more line to hold. The ones who can run, run. The ones who cannot scatter into the trees. But Jaime Lannister does not run. He is in the center of the fighting, on a grey destrier, his golden hair catching what light there is, and he fights with the absolute economy of a man who has been practicing this his entire life. He is 32 years old, and he is the best swordsman in the realm, and he knows it, and it has never helped him be humble, and it helps him now. He kills one northern rider in the saddle with a single stroke. He kills another trying to come at him from the right. The men around him form up on his position and try to hold a circle, and for a while it holds. Grey Wind takes the circle apart. The wolf does not fight like a dog. He is too large for that, too purposeful. He goes at the horses, not the men, and the horses go mad when he comes at them, and the circle breaks when 3 mounts bolt in 3 directions at once. A 4th rider cuts at the wolf and misses, and Robb is already in behind the stroke, driving his horse into the Lannister destrier's shoulder, and Jaime goes sideways in the saddle. He catches himself. He cuts at Robb's arm, and a northern rider takes the blow on his shield. Then there are 5 men on Jaime, and his sword arm is pinned, and his horse is down, and the fight is over. They bring him before Robb with his hands bound behind him, and his golden hair dark with sweat. Robb looks at him. Jaime Lannister looks back, 32 years old and 15 years old. The Kingslayer and the boy who grew up hearing the word Kingslayer as a curse, standing 10 feet apart in a dark forest that is still making the sounds of a finished battle. Jaime's green eyes move over Robb. the way a craftsman's eyes move over an unexpected piece of work, taking in the age, the bearing, the direwolf standing at his knee. He does not say anything. He is thinking something, and whatever it is, he keeps it. "Take him," Robb says. Meanwhile, north of River Run, the rest of Robb's force hits the siege lines. 3 battalions of Lannister men spread around the walls of River Run in their camps, and none of them positioned to deal with an attack from the north, because an attack from the north wasn't something they had needed to worry about until now. The Stark banners come down from the tree line fast, and inside the walls of River Run, Edmure Tully hears the shouting and opens the gates. He is 30 years old, and he has been inside those walls for 2 months, with his food running shorter and his options running out, and he comes out of River Run with the men he has left and hits the siege lines from the inside while the Starks hit them from the outside. The Lannister camp breaks. Men run south on the road, leaving their tents and their fires and the siege machinery behind them, and by the time the sun is fully up, the banner flying over River Run is the silver trout of House Tully. Edmure meets Robb in the courtyard with his uncle Brynden behind him. He looks at Robb for a moment, and then he says, "You are very young." "So I'm told," Robb says. That evening, River Run's great hall holds the lords of the north and the Riverlands, and the silver trout banners hang above them, and the candles burn on the long tables where the food has finally arrived after the long siege, and the men who were afraid to speak of winning now cannot stop. The great Yon Umber is at the head of it. He has been at the head of it since they walked through the gates, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, and when he stands and draws his sword in the middle of the meal, the hall goes quiet in a ripple from him outward. He puts the sword on the table, point toward Robb. "The king in the north!" the great Jon shouts. His voice fills the hall the way thunder fills a valley. "The king in the north! The king in the north!" Then it is everywhere at once. Swords on tables and on floors, voices from every direction. The river lords and the northern lords both, men who did not march together 3 months ago, and who have just bled together today. Lords who did not know each other's names a season ago are on their feet together, and the words fill River Run the way sound fills stone rooms, and comes back louder than it went in. Robb Stark stands at the center of it, and does not know what his face is doing. He is the king in the north. He is 15 years old. After the hall empties, and the men have gone to find their blankets, Robb stands at a window above the river, where the 3 waters meet. The fires of the relieved siege camp are still burning below. He is a king now. He can legitimize a bastard. That is the authority the crown just gave him. He knows Jon is not a bastard. He stands there with both of those truths at once, the one that the law recognizes, and the one that Howland Reed told him in a room in a floating castle, and he does not know yet what to do with the distance between them. The river runs below him, and does not care what he knows or what he holds. He will figure it out. He has to figure it out. But not tonight. The morning after the crowning is quieter than the night before. The feast has ended, the fires have burned down, and the lords who were shouting 2 hours ago are now sleeping the sleep of men who rode and fought and drank in a single day. River Run holds them all, the northern lords in the upper halls, the river lords in the lower ones, and somewhere below in the cells, Jaime Lannister in the dark. Robb meets his inner circle in the small room off the great hall before the castle is properly awake. He closes the door himself. He sits down and looks at the people who know. Catelyn sits across from him. Brynden Tully is at the window. Howland Reed is in the chair nearest the hearth, the same stillness on him that he carries everywhere, the stillness of a man the neck has taught patience. Edmure Tully stands near the door with the look of a man who has been asked to a meeting he was not quite told the purpose of, and who has figured out enough of it in the last 10 minutes to be alarmed. "Does anyone else know?" Robb asks. "No," Howland says. "Then this is everyone." Robb leans back. "I want to decide what we do with it, before it decides for us." Catelyn. Catelyn does not wait. She has been waiting since the neck for someone to ask her, and now someone has. "You do not announce it," she says. "Not yet. Not to anyone outside this room." She looks at each of them in turn, her blue eyes doing the work of nailing the point. "Half the men in this castle rode south to avenge Ned Stark. They follow you because of what your father was, and what the Lannisters did to him. If you stand up tonight in that hall and tell them that the reason Ned kept this secret is that your brother Jon is actually Rhaegar Targaryen's heir to the Iron Throne, half of them will walk out the door. These are men who lost fathers and brothers in Robert's rebellion. They did not ride south to put a Targaryen on the throne. They rode south for justice," Robb says. "They rode south for Ned Stark's justice. There is a difference." The Blackfish clears his throat. He has been leaning against the window with his arms folded, and his face in that particular arrangement that means he is deciding whether to say what he is thinking. "If it's true," he says, "it won't stay quiet. Things like this never do. A secret held by 6 people is not a secret. It is a slow fire." He looks at Catelyn. "You want to manage how it comes out? I understand that. But the longer it stays managed, the harder it is to explain why it was managed. We will end up looking like we were hiding it for reasons of our own, and men will wonder what those reasons were." "We can control the framing," Catelyn says. "There is no framing that makes Rhaegar Targaryen's son easier to sell to men who buried their brothers after the Battle of the Trident." They look at each other for a moment. The argument between them settled into the particular quiet of 2 people who have made the same argument before, and neither has moved. Robb listens to both of them and says nothing for a while. He is the king now. He became the king approximately 12 hours ago in a hall full of shouting men, and the weight of it is still finding its shape on him. He did not think, when he marched south, that the hardest part of this war would be a room with 5 people and no swords drawn. Howland Reed speaks. "I kept this secret for 15 years because Ned Stark asked me to," he says. "He did not tell me why he wanted it kept. He did not tell me for how long. He told me to keep it safe and bring it forward when the time came, and that the will itself would be my signal." He looks at the table. "The will has been read. Ned is dead. I did not hold on to this for 15 years because I thought it was a better world with Jon Snow not knowing who he was. I held it because Ned asked me to, and because he was my friend." He looks up. "Now the question is not whether to tell it. It is how." Edmure Tully has been listening from the door with the face of a man trying to keep up. "Forgive me," he says. "I want to make sure I understand what we are discussing." He looks at Robb. "Jon Snow, your father's bastard, the boy at the wall. He is actually the son of Rhaegar Targaryen." "Yes. And Rhaegar married Lyanna Stark. Before a heart tree. Witnesses were my father and Howland Reed." Edmure stares at the table. He is 30 years old and 2 days out of a siege that nearly starved his family's seat. And he is also a Tully, which means he is thinking about what this means for House Tully before he finishes thinking about what it means for anything else. "Robert's whole war," he says. "My uncle Brynden fought in that war. My father fought in that war. My house lost men." He stops. "I will stand by Robb. I made my oaths, and I mean them." He looks up, and his expression is the expression of a man doing difficult arithmetic. But I need you to understand that if you ask the River Lords to march for a Targaryen claimant, you will be asking them to reach a different place than where they thought they were going. I am not asking anyone to march for a Targaryen claimant, Robb says. I am not announcing anything. I am keeping it inside this room until I know what Jon wants to do with it. He looks around the table. Jon is the one whose life this changes. He gets to make the first decision. Nobody argues with that. Below the castle, in a stone room without windows, Jaime Lannister sits in the dark and listens to the guards outside his door. He has been listening for 2 days. Guards talk the way guards always talk, too loudly and too freely, and what they have been talking about is fragments that Jaime has been assembling in his head with the patience of a man who has nothing else to do. Jon Snow, the Stark bastard. Ned's will. Something about Rhaegar. Something about a tower of joy. Jaime sits very still for a long time after that. He knows about the Tower of Joy. He knows what was in the Tower of Joy and what came out of it, because he was the Kingslayer, and there are things a Kingslayer learns about the business of kings. He was sworn to Aerys when all of that was happening. He knew Rhaegar. He knew Lyanna was at that tower in Dorne, knew it in the way that the Kingsguard knew things it was not permitted to discuss. He holds the fragments together and looks at the shape they make. A bastard who is not a bastard. A Targaryen heir that no one knew existed. A boy at the wall. He thinks about what this means for the war he has just lost, and for the prisoner he currently is, and for the king who captured him, and for a great many other things he will have a long time to think about in a stone room. He does not share any of this with the guards. By afternoon, Robb has made his choice. He keeps the revelation inside the room where it was given. He gives instructions to each of the 5 people present. Nothing leaves this circle. Not yet. Not until he says otherwise. Howland Reed agrees. Edmure agrees, slowly. Catelyn agrees with the expression of a woman who has agreed to the least bad option available to her. Brynden nods once. Then Robb sits alone at the table with a piece of parchment and writes. He writes to Jon. He does not explain what the last weeks have been, because Jon has the other letters and will piece it together. He does not ask for forgiveness or permission. He has no right to ask for either, and this is not the kind of letter where those things are the point. What he writes is simple. He has won. He is king in the north. He knows the truth, all of it, confirmed from the mouth of the man who was in the room when it happened. And now he is asking Jon the only question that matters. Will Jon come south? Not as a deserter, not in disgrace, but as what he is, as what Ned Stark said he was, and Howland Reed confirmed under oath. Come south. Be here. Let Robb say to his face what he has been saying in letters across 1,000 miles of road. He sends the raven before he can reconsider. At Castle Black, the evening is cold, and the wall is dark above the fortress, and Jon Snow is in the yard sharpening a blade when the rookery man comes to find him. The letter has the Stark seal on the outside, and Robb's cramped handwriting beneath it. Jon opens it, standing there in the cold. He reads it. His face does not move. He reads it again. He folds it once, carefully, the way he folds all of them, and puts it inside his jacket with the others, where they rest against his chest like a second heartbeat. Then he turns and walks toward Maester Aemon's quarters, and Ghost falls in beside him, white and silent in the dark. Jon goes to Maester Aemon's quarters when the evening is fully dark. He carries the letter in his jacket with the others, the stack of them that have been building against his chest like a weight he has been accumulating since the raven from Winterfell arrived, and he sits down in the chair across from the old man, and he tells him everything. He tells it in order. He starts with his father's will and what it said on the first side. He tells Aemon about the inner letter and what that said on the second side. He tells him about Robb's confirmations, and about Howland Reed and the Tower of Joy, and a woman dying in a bed of blood who made her brother promise. He tells it plainly, the way he has been telling himself these things for weeks now. Because the only way he can hold any of it is to say it as if it is simply a set of facts, one after another, with no weight attached. Aemon listens without moving. He sits with his hands folded in his lap and his eyes on nothing, because his eyes see nothing, and he listens to every word without interrupting. When Jon finishes, the room is quiet. The fire is small and the candles are down. Aemon is very still. "You are Rhaegar's son," Aemon says. He does not say it as a question. "Yes." Another pause, long enough that Jon can hear the fire. "I held Rhaegar when he was an infant," Aemon says. "He was born the year of the Summerhall fire. I was already old. I have been old for a long time." He turns his face toward Jon with the precision of a blind man who has learned the direction of voices. "I knew the shape of his face from the ravens. I knew the sound of his name for 50 years of news from the south, from letters I read by touch when my eyes were still my own, and then had read to me after. I knew when he died, at the Trident, and I sat in this room that night, and did what I could not do anywhere else." A long pause. "I have sat at this wall for 80 years, so that family would not pull me back, and now here you sit." Jon does not say anything. "You want to go?" Aemon says. "You have been deciding it since the letters came. You are asking me something you already know the answer to." "I am asking you not to tell me what to do," Jon says. "I know the oath. I know what breaking it costs. I know all of it." He looks at the old man's face, the ancient face that has been watching dynasties end from this frozen place at the edge of the world for a century. "I want you to know why I'm going. Before I go." Aemon is quiet for a while. "Then go for the right reason," he says at last. "Not because a letter told you. Not because a man you have never met confirmed a thing a dead man wrote. Go because you have decided." He folds his hands tighter. "Whatever you choose it on purpose." Jon sits there a while longer. Then he says thank you and goes. Sam finds him in the early dark before dawn, packing the small room he has occupied since he took his vows. The pack is nearly full when Sam appears in the doorway, and Sam looks at it, and then at Jon, and his round face does the thing it does when Sam is working hard, not to say the first thing that comes to him. He does not try to stop him. Sam knows what desertion is. Sam knows what desertion means for a man the watch catches afterward, and Sam knows the distance from Castle Black to anywhere that is not the wall, and does not pretend otherwise. He stands in the doorway and watches Jon press the letters flat inside the pack and close it. "Will you tell me what you find?" Sam asks. Jon looks at him. "If I live long enough." Sam nods. He steps aside from the doorway. Jon goes to the Lord Commander's tower before the sky begins to lighten. He knocks. He is admitted. He stands in a room he has stood in 100 times as a steward, in front of a man he has served for the better part of a year, and he says what he has come to say. He tells the Lord Commander his name. His real name, not the one he grew up with. He tells him what he is, and what it means, and why he is going south. He does not ask permission. There is no mechanism in the oath for permission, and he is not a man who asks for things he knows will not be given. He stands and lets the Lord Commander hear it and waits to see what comes after. The Lord Commander is quiet for a long time. Then, "I cannot stop you. I could have men at the gates and dogs on the road, and I still could not stop you, because if what you say is true, you are the blood this watch was built to serve." He pauses. "But I am still the Lord Commander, and the watch must do what the watch must do." He looks at Jon. "You will be declared a deserter. The sentence is death." "I know," Jon says. He turns and leaves. The horse is saddled in the yard, breath coming in clouds in the cold air, and Ghost is there already, sitting at the gate as if the wolf knew where they were going before Jon did. Ghost does not make sounds. He has never made sounds. He just sits at the gate with his white coat still against the dark pre-dawn, and when Jon comes with the horse, Ghost gets up and walks through the gate beside him. 2 guards are at the gate. Jon knows both of them. He has eaten breakfast with both of them a dozen times, and trained in the yard beside them, and said the same words of the same oath under the same sky. One of them reaches for the horn on the post beside the gate, the signal horn, the deserter's horn. His hand closes around it. Jon meets his eyes. The guard holds the horn. He does not lift it. He looks at Jon for a long moment with his hand on the horn, and then he lets go and steps back, and Jon rides through the gate. He does not look back at the wall. He knows what is behind him without looking. He has looked at it every day for the better part of a year. 700 feet of ice, grey in the early light, built by hands that have been dead for 8,000 years, to keep things out that have not come back yet. He swore to defend it until his death. He swore it in front of a weirwood tree, in the company of a fat boy from the Reach, and the memory of his uncle who had not come back, and he meant every word when he said it. Now he is riding away from it, and the road south runs under his horse's hooves, and does not ask him how he feels about that. Ghost runs beside him. The wolf's white shape is the only bright thing on the road in the early morning, moving without sound through the grey light, and Jon watches him run and thinks about what Meister Aemon said. Choose it on purpose. He chose it. He chose it in the small room in the dark before dawn, in the middle of a pack he was already filling, and he has been choosing it every day since the first letter arrived, the one with his father's handwriting on the front, and a name he has had his whole life written below it. Jon Snow. That is not his name. His name is something else, something that has weight and history and enemies attached to it, something that changes everything. He is choosing it now. The wall falls away behind him as the miles go. The King's Road stretches south through 2,000 miles of land he has never travelled, and at the end of it, somewhere south of Winterfell and past the Neck and through the Riverlands, and beyond, his brother is a king. His brother is a king, and he is a deserter. Jon Snow rides south, and Ghost runs beside him, and above them the sky opens up wide and pale and cold, and the wall gets smaller and smaller behind him, until it is nothing but a line on the horizon, and then nothing at all. News travels on many roads. Servants talk and merchants carry words between towns the way they carry cloth and salt, and a raven sent from one castle can be read by a dozen hands before it reaches its destination, if enough of those hands know what they are looking for. What reaches King's Landing is not one message. It is fragments, arriving over the course of 5 days, and each fragment is more alarming than the last. Jaime is a prisoner. The battle at the Whispering Wood went badly. The Lannister position at the Green Fork didn't hold, and Tywin has pulled north of the Trident, with whatever he salvaged from the crossing. These are the military facts, and Cersei Lannister reads them in the dispatch from Tywin's own Maester, and feels the floor settle slightly under her feet, the way a floor settles when you have built something on it and are watching it shift. The military facts she can work with. She has Sansa Stark in the Red Keep. She has the city. She has Joffrey on the throne, and the gold cloaks at the gates, and a city of 500,000 people who have not been given a reason to riot yet. Military reversals are reversals. Wars go back and forth. Then the second dispatch arrives, and it is not from Tywin. It comes from a merchant who does business with the Freys, who heard something from a man on the road south of the Twins, who heard it from a soldier who had been at the Whispering Wood. The report is vague and confused, and carries the particular quality of information that has passed through too many mouths to be reliable, which means it might also be completely true. Robb Stark's brother, Jon Snow the bastard, a will, a Targaryen secret, the name Rhaegar. Cersei reads it standing at her window over the city, the golden spires of King's Landing spread below her in the morning light, and she holds very still. She summons the small council. Joffrey is already seated at the head of the table when she arrives, which she expected, and he is already telling one of the serving men where to stand, which she also expected. He is 12 years old, and he has been king for long enough to have opinions about everything and wisdom about nothing, and Cersei loves him and fears what he is becoming in the same breath, and this is not the morning for either of those feelings. "There is a report," she says, before the council has fully settled, "that Ned Stark kept a secret about his bastard, that the boy at the wall is not his bastard at all, that the boy is Rhaegar Targaryen's son." The room is very quiet. Joffrey looks up from his distraction. Even he understands what that name means. "Is it true?" asks one of the council. "I don't know yet," Cersei says. "What I know is that it does not have to be true to be dangerous. It only has to be believed." She looks around the table. Robert won a war to put an end to the Targaryens. The entire foundation of this throne rests on the fact that the Targaryens are gone. If they are not gone, if there is a living heir, if that heir is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen, every lord in the realm will have to decide what he thinks about Robert's rebellion all over again. She lets that land. We cannot allow anyone to make that argument. She does not say what she means, which is that the boy must be found and dealt with before he reaches River Run. She does not say it because there are too many ears in this room, and because Joffrey is sitting at the head of the table with his chin up, and when she looks at her son, she thinks about what he does when someone gives him an instruction he likes too well. North of the Riverlands, Tywin Lannister reads the same rumor in his retreating camp and sets it down without expression. He is 56 years old, and he manages crises by understanding their dimensions before he reacts. Robb Stark is a military problem, the kind Tywin knows how to solve. A living Targaryen claimant is a different kind of problem entirely. The realm has been telling itself a particular story since Robert took the throne, and Tywin helped write that story. If the story changes, no army fixes it. He dictates 2 letters before he has had breakfast, both short, both sent by separate ravens. Far to the east, on its island of black stone in the narrow sea, Dragonstone receives the same rumor 3 days later. Stannis Baratheon reads the dispatch once. He sets it face down on the painted table, that ancient sculpted map of Westeros that his brother Robert sat beside when he took Dragonstone after the rebellion. The table that shows every castle and every road, and every piece of the realm that Stannis has been fighting for since Robert died. He puts his hands flat on it. He is 34 years old, and he has the strongest legal claim to the throne in the 7 kingdoms, stronger even than Robert had when Robert took it, because the claim descends from Robert, and Robert is dead, and Joffrey is not Robert's son. Stannis knows this. He has always known this. He has spent the months since Robert's death preparing to press it. A living Targaryen heir complicates this in ways that Stannis does not like to look at directly. His claim rests on Robert's right. Robert's right rested partly on conquest and partly on the argument that the Targaryens' line had ended in madness and deserved to end. If Rhaegar left a true-born son, that argument looks different. If a boy exists with better blood than Robert, then Robert's claim was weaker than anyone said, and Stannis's claim, which descends from Robert, is weaker too. Not legally. Not in the way that the succession actually works, but in the way that men decide who they follow when they have the choice. Stannis sends no ravens south. He stands at the painted table and thinks. Meanwhile, in the Stormlands and the Reach, Renly Baratheon is having the best week of his campaign. He is 21 years old, and he is charming in the way that certain people are charming, the way that fills a room without effort and makes men feel they chose to be there. And he has been using that charm to build an army out of lords who wanted an excuse to pick a side. He is not Robert's heir by law. He knows this. He does not care, or rather he cares in the way that a man cares about a door he is planning to go around. When the rumor of a Targaryen claimant reaches his camp, Renly stands before his assembled lords, and he uses it. You see, he tells them, and his voice carries the particular warmth of a man sharing a confidence with everyone in the room at once. This is exactly why we cannot afford to wait. Robert died and left the door open. Stannis stands in the door arguing about whose name is on the deed, and nobody is asking the most important question, which is who's going to hold this realm together when something older and darker comes south to take back what Robert won. He spreads his hands. I am asking it. I am the answer to it. His lords follow him in the direction he is pointing, and do not ask where the Targaryen secret came from, or whether it is true, or what it means. They are not asking those questions yet. Back in King's Landing, in the Red Keep, Sansa Stark sits in her room and listens to what the servants do not say. She is 12 years old, and she has learned the lesson that the Red Keep teaches everyone who lives in it long enough, which is that the walls carry information if you know how to hear it, and what people do not say is often more useful than what they do. She has been at this for months now. She is getting better at it. Something has happened in the war. Her brother is winning. She knows this because the servants are quieter than they were, and because the household knights move through the corridors with a different quality of tension, the kind that belongs to men waiting for bad news, rather than men who have already received it. She does not know what the bad news is yet, but she has heard Jaime Lannister's name spoken in lowered voices, and she has heard something about a will and a bastard, and a name she does not recognize, and she has seen Cersei cross the yard 3 times this week before breakfast, with that particular set to her jaw that means the Queen is afraid of something. Sansa says nothing about any of this to anyone. She sits in her room. She waits. She folds her hands in her lap and keeps her face, the way she has learned to keep her face, which is smooth and pleasant and blank as still water. She is very good at waiting. She has been practicing. Word travels ahead of him, the way word always travels, faster than the man it concerns. By the time Jon Snow rides up to Riverrun's gate, the gatehouse guards have already heard something about a Night's Watch deserter heading south on the King's Road with a white direwolf, which is not the kind of combination you forget when you hear about it. The guards look at Ghost and look at Jon, and look at the combination of the two, and one of them puts his hand on the gate before Jon has even opened his mouth. "I'm here to see my brother," Jon says. "Tell him Jon Snow is at the gate." They send a man at a run. Jon waits in the road outside, Ghost sitting beside his horse with the particular patience of something that knows it will be let through. River Run is not like anything Jon has seen before. A castle built in the fork of two rivers, the water running on three sides, the Tully banners bright in the afternoon sun. It is his mother's family's seat. He looks at it and thinks that for 15 years he was a bastard who did not have a family seat. And now here he is, standing outside one, and being told by the circumstances of his life that this is not even the one that belongs to him. The gate opens. Robb is already at the steps. He comes down 2 at a time, which is not the way kings descend stairs, and he crosses the courtyard at a pace that is somewhere between walking and something faster, and he takes Jon by the arm and pulls him in before either of them has said a word. They stand in the courtyard like that for a moment, the king in the north and the Night's Watch deserter, both 15 years old, neither of them letting go. "You came," Robb says into his shoulder. "You asked," Jon says. There is no one to receive them formally. This was discussed in advance, or at least the relevant absence was. Brynden Tully stands at the side of the courtyard with his arms folded, which is the Blackfish's way of being present without being in the way, and he nods at Jon once when Jon meets his eyes. There is no one else. There is notably no one at the upper window where one might expect to see a face looking down, and there is notably no one coming out of the keep's main entrance, and Jon understands without being told. "She's not coming," Jon says. "Not yet," Robb says. They go inside. Howland Reed is waiting in the great hall, as Jon knew he would be. Jon has known about this meeting since the letters, since Robb wrote, "Howland Reed has confirmed it," and sent the Raven north. But there is a difference between knowing something through parchment and ink and standing in front of the man who was there. Howland is smaller than Jon expected. The men who change the world are rarely the size you imagine them. He looks at Jon the way Jon has noticed certain people look at him, the people who knew Ned Stark well, searching for the father in the son. He looks for a moment, and then he looks away. "You already know what I'm going to tell you," Howland says. "Tell me anyway," Jon says. "I need to hear it from a person." So Howland tells it. He tells it the same way he told it to Robb, plainly and without decoration, because the story itself is enough, and ornamentation would dishonor it. He tells it from the tower in dawn, from the fight at the door, from the men who did not come back. He tells it from the room where Lyanna was, from the fever and the blood and the boy. He tells it from the last words she said, the ones that were not for Howland and that he did not try to hear. When Howland finishes, Jon is looking at the floor. There is a silence in the hall, the Three River kind, a silence that has current to it. "Was she afraid?" Jon asks. Howland considers this for a moment. "She was burning up with fever," he says, "and she was still arguing about what I couldn't say. But she was arguing." He pauses. "So, no. I don't think afraid is the word." Jon nods. He is quiet for a long time after that. He looks at the far wall and holds whatever he is holding, and Robb stands close enough to reach him, if reaching is what is needed, and far enough away to give him room, and Ghost pads over and presses against Jon's leg and stays there. Robb sends Howland out after a while, and it is just the two of them. "You are the king," Robb says. He says it with the directness of someone who has been waiting a long time to say it out loud to the person it concerns. Not just of the North, of all of it, the 7 kingdoms, the Iron Throne. Your father was the Prince of Dragonstone, and he married your mother, and you are his true-born son, which means you have a better claim to that throne than anyone alive." "Don't," Jon says. Robb takes a step back and begins to lower himself. "I said don't." Jon's voice has an edge in it that Robb has never heard before, not from the Jon he grew up with, not from the boy who sharpened his sword in Winterfell's yard and slept in the same rooms and ate at the same table. It is the edge of someone who is managing something very large and very carefully, and cannot afford to have it tipped by someone kneeling. Robb straightens. "Jon." "You are a king," Jon says. "I watched you win this war. You are the king your father made you. I am not going to let you kneel to me for a decision I haven't made." He looks at Robb and his grey eyes are completely even and completely honest. "I don't know what I am yet. I know what the letters say. I know what Howland told me. But I haven't decided what to do with any of it. And until I do, nobody kneels. Not to me." They argue about this. They argue the way brothers argue about serious things, quietly and at length, the conversation circling back through the same points multiple times with slightly different framings, until both of them have run out of new angles and are simply standing in the same positions they started in, which is often how these things end. It is late that night when Catelyn comes. Jon is alone near the window that looks over the river, the one Robb showed him when they first went up there together in the afternoon. He hears her steps before she appears, and he does not turn around. He waits. She stops a few feet away. She does not sit. She stands in the room, the way she has always stood, in rooms with him, with the particular straight-backed composure of a woman who made a decision a long time ago and has lived with it, and is not going to apologize for it now, even if the decision turns out to have been based on a misunderstanding. "I have spent 15 years resenting a ghost," she says. "I was wrong about what the ghost was." A pause. "I was not wrong to protect my children." "I know," Jon says. Another pause. He hears her breathing change slightly, the way breathing changes when a person is deciding whether to say the next thing. "I'm not here to take anything that was theirs," he says, before she can decide against it. "I was never here for that." She looks at him for a moment in the dim light. He turns around to let her, and she looks at his face. The dark hair, the grey eyes, the stark face that Ned Stark carried, and that Jon has been carrying for 15 years as evidence of a lie that was also a promise. And then she turns and walks out of the room. No forgiveness, no softness. But she came, and she said what she came to say, and she heard what she needed to hear. That is its own thing, whatever it is called. That night, Robb finds Jon again. "Tell me what you're going to do," Robb says. "I am going to fight," Jon says. He says it simply, the way he would have said it at Castle Black when someone asked him if he intended to take his vows, as a thing that is simply true and doesn't require argument. "I am not going to stand before the lords of the 7 kingdoms and claim my father's name. Not yet. Maybe not ever. There is a throne in King's Landing, and the Lannisters are sitting on it, and your father's daughters are still captives, and I am going to help you deal with all of that first." He pauses. "But I'm not going to pretend to be what I was before. I know what I am. I am not going to call myself something I'm not." Robb looks at him for a long moment. "You'll always be my brother," he says. "And you'll always be my king," Jon says. He says it without irony and without bitterness. He means it in the way that certain things are simply true, and the only honest thing to do is to say so. They sit together for a while in the dark, the river-run river running below them through the dark, and whatever comes next waits for morning. The army that leaves Riverrun is larger than the one that arrived at Moat Cailin what feels like a lifetime ago. The northern men are still there, the men of the Umber and the Bolton and the Carstark and a dozen other houses, thinner now for the battles they have fought and harder for the same reason. Joined to them are the Tully bannermen, the river lords who came out of Riverrun when Edmure Tully opened the gates, and the men who had been in the Lannister-occupied Riverlands, and who are fighting now with the particular fury of people whose homes have been occupied. It is the largest host the Riverlands has seen in a generation. It moves south on the King's Road. Robb rides at the front. Jon rides at his right hand. Howland Reed's crannogmen are spread through the wooded flanks of the column like shadows, moving from tree line to tree line ahead of the advance, telling Robb what lies on the road before he reaches it. Grey Wind runs close to Robb's stirrup. Ghost runs close to Jon's. The two wolves are the only things in the column that look entirely unbothered by where they are going. 2 days south of Riverrun, a rider intercepts them on the road. He is wearing no house colours. He carries a dispatch and announces himself as a servant of the Lord of Dragonstone, which is a careful way of saying what he actually is. Lord Stannis Baratheon sends his respects, the man says, and hands the dispatch to Robb without quite looking at Jon. Stannis's message is short. It has the quality of a man who chose every word for its legal precision rather than its warmth. He has his own claim to the throne of the Seven Kingdoms, the strongest lawful claim in the realm, and he will not yield it to anyone who calls himself Aegon Targaryen or any other name. This is a statement of fact, not a threat. He also notes that he does not intend to interfere with a host marching against the Lannisters, since the Lannisters are his enemies as well as theirs, and 2 armies pursuing separate agendas against the same enemy is not an alliance, but it is also not a war. Robb reads it and hands it to Jon. Jon reads it and thinks for a moment. He is right about the claim, Jon says, and he says it without bitterness or challenge, just as observation. He should be right about the claim. We can deal with that after. They send Stannis's man back with a short answer. They are marching on Joffrey Baratheon, who sits the throne by fraud and holds Robb's sisters hostage. They do not ask Stannis to march with them. They ask only that he not march against them. The succession is a question for after the fraud is dealt with. Stannis will think about that in his own way and do what he will do. He is not a factor today. Meanwhile, the road ahead grows more crowded with the particular kind of traffic that travels toward cities under threat. People leaving. Merchants with carts. Families with bundles. Men and women who have decided not to be inside King's Landing when whatever is coming arrives. They part for the column and do not look anyone in the eye. Word has travelled before, the army the way word always travels. And the question of what is in that army and what it is carrying has already gone through every inn and way station south of Riverrun. The city appears on the morning of the 3rd day. They come up over a long rise, and King's Landing is laid out below them, enormous and sprawling, and smelling of 500,000 people and the sea wind. The walls are pale stone in the morning light. The Red Keep sits on Aegon's high hill above everything, its towers distinct against the sky. To the left, the great sept of Baelor rises on Visenya's hill, with its crystal dome catching the early sun. To the right, the dragon pit on Rhaenys's hill stands ruined and open-roofed, a reminder of what this city was built around and no longer has. Lannister banners on the walls. Gates closed. The column halts. The men who have been moving for days stand still and look at it. A rider comes out of the city before Robb has finished his survey. He comes out of a sally gate in the King's Gate wall, alone, carrying nothing but a message in his hand. He rides up the slope to where Robb and Jon wait and stops at a respectful distance. "The Queen Regent sends greetings," he says. He delivers the message with the particular care of a man who knows what he is carrying. She wishes Lord Stark to know that his sister Sansa is alive and well and comfortable in the Red Keep. She hopes that Lord Stark will consider the welfare of his sister when he considers what he intends to do with that army. He does not finish the sentence. He does not need to. The thing he is not saying hangs in the morning air like smoke. Robb's jaw tightens. He looks at the city. He looks at the messenger. Beside him, Jon's face has gone completely still. It is the stillness of someone who is not permitting themselves to react, which is its own reaction, the controlled kind. He looks at the walls of the Red Keep across the distance, and he looks at the Lannister banners on them, and he does not say anything for a moment. "Tell the Queen Regent," Robb says, "that we're coming." The messenger goes back the way he came. Robb turns to the Blackfish, to Edmure, to the assembled captains of the combined host. His face is 17 kinds of angry, all of them very controlled, and he says exactly one thing. They know that stopping us costs them the city. If we stop, we lose. We do not stop. They divide the host on the road below the rise. Robb takes the northern cavalry around to the Lion Gate on the city's western face. Edmure Tully leads the River Lord infantry and the Tully foot down the main approach to the Mud Gate. The King's Road runs straight to the Mud Gate like it was always meant for this. The city has no fleet in the harbour today. It has nowhere to go. Shields up, horses forward. The ground shakes. The Lion Gate holds for less than an hour. The northern cavalry hits it the way they hit the Whispering Wood and hit the siege lines at River Run, fast and hard, and in numbers the garrison was not built to deal with. The gates are heavy and the walls are manned, but the garrison's morale has been sliding since the news from the Green Fork and the Whispering Wood came back. And there is a point in every defense where the men on the walls look at the number of men on the other side and make a calculation about what winning looks like for them personally, and that point arrives at the Lion Gate before the morning is half done. Horses crash into the gate timbers. Men on the walls go down to arrows from below. Grey Wind is in the vanguard, and the screaming from his direction is not the kind that belongs to men who are holding their positions. The crossbar cracks. The hinges give. The gate breaks. Men pour through. At the Mud Gate, the River Lord infantry drives hard, and the gate cracks under the weight of them, and then fighting spills into the streets on both sides, and the city is no longer defended, it is contested. Jon is through the Lion Gate in the second wave, Ghost running ahead of his horse in the narrow street. The wolf a white shape in the smoke and chaos that the horses shy from, and the men break away from, opening a path that Jon rides through with his sword up and his eyes on the road ahead. The city fights back in pockets, small clusters of Lannister men who have not yet decided to stop, and Jon clears them the way he was trained at Winterfell to clear them, economically and with the minimum force required. He is not Robert Baratheon. He does not fight for show. He is Ned Stark's son. He fights like a man who wants to live and wants the fight to end. The streets of King's Landing funnel them upward toward the Red Keep, and the Red Keep sits on its hill with its gates still closed, and the garrison on its walls thins noticeably as the afternoon goes on. Men stepping back from their positions, the Lannister banners still flying, but not quite as confidently as they were in the morning. Robb's host reaches the base of the Red Keep's outer walls as the sun starts down from its peak. The garrison on the ramparts looks down at them, with the expression of men who are doing arithmetic that is not going well for them. Joffrey Baratheon is behind those walls. Cersei Lannister is behind those walls. Sansa Stark is behind those walls. The fighting in the city behind them is diminishing now, the pockets of resistance fewer and farther between. The combined host controls King's Landing. The Red Keep is the last of it. Robb looks at the walls. Beside him, Jon looks at the walls. They wait. The Red Keep does not fall the way a castle is supposed to fall. There is no single breach, no great battering ram driven through a gate, no moment where a trumpet sounds and the defenders throw down their swords in a clean and legible surrender. What happens is slower and messier than that, the way most real things are. There is a postern gate on the eastern side, half forgotten or half abandoned in the confusion of the night's fighting, and 2 of Robb's men find it in the grey hour before dawn and find it unbarred, because someone on the inside wanted it unbarred, and the story of who opened that gate is a story that Robb never fully pieces together. He has his guesses. Later, he has one guess in particular that seems more right than the others, but in the moment, he does not know, and there is no time to ask. What he knows is that the gate is open. What he does with that information is everything else. The order goes through the host in the dark, past hand to hand and mouth to ear, and the men who flow through the postern gate do so in near silence, the way men move when they know that silence is the difference between living and not. The Blackfish leads the first group. Jon leads the second. Robb holds position outside and feels the particular helplessness of command, which is that the most important things happen where you are not, and you can only wait and trust the men you've sent. Ghost goes with Jon. Robb watches them disappear into the dark inside the gate and says nothing, because there is nothing to say that would not be the wrong thing. The inner yards of the Red Keep are larger than they look from outside. Jon knows this because he has heard it said. But hearing something said, and walking through it in the dark with 40 men at his back, are different kinds of knowing. The yard stones are slick with the night's damp. Somewhere above them, a torch moves along a parapet, and Jon holds his hand flat, and the column stops and they wait until the torch moves away again. Ghost moves through the dark ahead of them, white and silent and wrong-looking in the shadows, the way large, pale things look wrong in darkness. The guards they encounter along the inner passage do not have time to make noise about it. Jon does not think about this too carefully. He files it away in the part of himself where he has been filing things all night, all week, all the way back to a room in a floating castle in a marsh, where Howland Reed told him who he was. There are things you do not think about while you are doing them. There is time for that later. There is either time for that later, or there is not, and you do not know which until the thing is finished. They find the first set of Lannister guards at the base of the Queen's Tower and deal with them. They find the second set at the top of the first stair and deal with them. The third set is larger, 8 men, and there is a moment of noise that Jon cannot prevent entirely, but it is brief and then it is over, and Ghost has blood on his muzzle that is not his, and they move on. The door at the top is barred from the inside. Jon puts his hand flat on the wood and stands there for a moment, listening. He can hear nothing from inside. He does not know if that is good or not. He knocks twice, the way the Crannogman described, 2 knocks close and 1 after a breath. Silence. Then the sound of something heavy being shifted on the other side, and the bar lifting, and the door opening, and the candlelight inside falls across Jon's face and across the face of the girl standing in the doorway, and they look at each other. Sansa Stark has her mother's colouring and her father's eyes. Jon has known her for her whole life and has not seen her in almost a year, and what the year has done to her face is not something he has a word for yet. She is taller. She is thinner. She is dressed in a nightgown with a robe thrown over it, and she is holding a candlestick, and her face is doing something complicated that he thinks might be trying not to cry, and also trying not to hope too hard for something that might still be taken away. "John," she says. "It's me," he says. "It's over. Come on." She steps across the threshold and does not look back at the room behind her, and he thinks that is exactly right, and he does not make her explain it. They find Joffrey in the throne room. This is not where Robb expects to find him. Robb is inside the keep by then, having come through the postern gate when the first signal came, and he is moving through the inner corridors with Greatjon Umber and a dozen men at his back, following the sounds of what remains of the fight, and then the sounds of the fight stop, and what is left is a door at the end of a hall and 2 Kingsguard knights outside it. The knights are Sir Meryn Trant and a man Robb does not recognize. They have their swords drawn. They are not going to yield, which Robb can see in their faces before anyone says anything. The Kingsguard do not yield. It is, in its way, the most honest thing about them. What follows is fast and close and brutal in the way that hallway fighting always is. And when it is over, Sir Meryn Trant is dead, and the other knight is wounded and sitting against the wall, and Greatjon Umber has a cut along his forearm that will need stitching but is not serious, and Robb's hands are shaking slightly, which he does not let himself look at. The door to the throne room is not locked. Robb opens it. The Iron Throne sits at the far end of the room, and the torches along the walls are lit, and the room is cold despite them, the way large stone rooms are always cold regardless of fire. Joffrey Baratheon is standing at the foot of the steps that lead up to the throne, and he is wearing his crown and his Kingsguard armor that has never seen battle, and he has a sword in his hand that he has never used in earnest. He is 13 years old. He looks smaller than his portraits. He looks, in this moment, like what he is, which is a frightened boy in a room full of men who have come to take something from him. Cersei Lannister is standing beside him. Her hand is on his shoulder, and her face is the face she shows the court, which is composed and correct and gives away nothing, except that Robb can see around the edges of it to the thing underneath, because he has learned, over this year, something about the difference between composure and control. She is not in control. She has not been in control since the postern gate opened. "You have no right," Joffrey says. His voice is high, and he is trying to make it not be, and he is not succeeding. "I am the king. You are a traitor and a rebel, and when my grandfather, your grandfather's army is broken," Robb says. "Casterly Rock is the last of it, and we are not there yet. But we will be. Then you'll answer for this when—" "Joffrey." Cersei's voice is quiet. She says only the name. Joffrey stops. Robb looks at Cersei. Cersei looks at Robb. There is a long moment between them that is not quite negotiation and not quite surrender, and is something in between, and Robb thinks of everything he knows about her, which is mostly what Jon has told him, and what his mother told him in River Run, and what he has pieced together from the shape of the choices she has made. She is not stupid. She has never been stupid. She is a woman who has been given a game with rules she did not write, and has played it harder than most men manage, and she is looking at him now with the eyes of someone doing a very fast calculation. "What happens to my son?" she says. "It is not a question. It is the only question." Robb has thought about this. He has thought about it since River Run, since before River Run, since the night at the Twins when he sat by the fire and understood for the first time what winning this war might actually mean. He has talked to his mother about it. He has talked to Jon about it. He has not talked to anyone else about it, because some decisions are not councils. "He lives," Robb says. "He is not harmed. He is taken to Dragonstone and held there." Cersei's face does not change, and the question of succession is settled, Robb says. "It was settled before I crossed the neck." The room is quiet. The torches move in a draught from somewhere, shadows running up the walls and across the ceiling and over the iron throne, which looks, in this light, like what it is. A thing made of swords, ugly and sharp and impractical, built to say something about power rather than to be comfortable in the having of it. Joffrey's hand tightens on his sword, and Robb watches it and calculates the distance between them. "Joffrey," Cersei says again. The sword goes down. The morning comes clear for the first time in days, the clouds pushed east by a wind off the bay, and the light that falls on King's Landing is winter light, pale and horizontal and without warmth. But it falls on everything equally, which is its own kind of statement. Jon stands on the walls of the Red Keep in that light and looks out at the city below. The fighting is over. There are still places that are burning, fires set in the chaos of the night that the city's people are working to put out, and there are still places where bodies need to be moved and counted, and there are 1,000 things that need doing before the day is finished, and he knows it, and he stands there anyway for a moment and looks out. Ghost sits beside him. The wolf's coat catches the morning light and holds it. Robb comes to stand beside him presently, without ceremony, the way Robb moves through things now that the thing is done. He is still in his armor. There is blood on his sleeve that is not his. He looks tired in the bone-deep way that is past sleep being a remedy for it, and he looks out at the city the same way Jon does, and for a while they just stand there. "Sansa is all right," Jon says. "I know. I saw her." Robb pauses. "She asked about Mother." Jon looks at him. "What did you tell her?" "That I'd sent word to Riverrun, that she'll come when the roads are clear enough." He pauses again. "She didn't ask anything else. She just said, 'Good.' And then she went back to her room and closed the door." Jon thinks about the girl in the doorway with the candlestick, the way she did not look back at the room she was leaving. She'll need time. We all will. The city moves below them, beginning to do what cities do, which is survive. Carts on the streets, smoke from the cook fires, the ordinary kind. A dog barking somewhere, the ordinary kind of that too. The ordinary world reassembling itself around the fact of what happened, because the ordinary world always does, because it has no other choice. "The Lords will want to know," Jon says. "I know. They'll have questions about succession, about what happens next, about—" He stops. "About me." Robb turns his head and looks at him directly. "I know what they'll have questions about." Jon looks back. The morning light falls between them. Down in the yard below, someone is calling an order, and men are moving in response to it. The machinery of armies beginning its slow conversion into something else. The machinery of occupation and governance and peace, which is harder than war in the ways that matter. "You are Aegon Targaryen," Robb says. It is the first time he has said it out loud, in the full version, without the hedges around it. "Son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, and my father's will names you his heir, which means the question of what you are is a question the Lords of the North and the Riverlands, and everyone else who bent the knee to me will need to answer." "I know," Jon says. "What do you want?" The question hangs there in the cold morning air. Jon has been turning it over since Maester Aemon's quarters, since the night he rode away from the wall with Ghost at his side, and the wall getting smaller behind him, since Greywater Watch, and the floating castle, and the look on Howland Reed's face when he said what he had kept for 15 years. He has been asking himself what Ned Stark wanted. He has been asking himself what Rhaegar Targaryen was, which is a question he cannot fully answer. He has been asking himself what Lyanna Stark gave up, and what she chose, and whether those are the same thing. He has not, until this moment, been asked simply what he wants. "I want Sansa safe," he says. "I want the North to hold. I want the Watch to get the men it needs for what's coming, because what's coming is real, and the wall is not enough, and people need to understand that before it's too late to matter. He pauses. I want to be useful. Robb makes a sound that might be a laugh and might be something else. That's a very stark answer. I was raised by one. 2, technically. Robb looks back out at the city. You know what our father wanted. He wrote it down. He wrote what he thought was right. That's not the same as what I want. No, Robb agrees. It's not. The wind comes off the bay and moves through them, and below, the city keeps doing what it does. Here is what I think, Robb says, in the tone that is not the Lord's tone or the King's tone, but the one he has had since they were boys, the one that means he is going to say something he has thought through carefully and is still not certain of. I think the North needs a Stark. I think the lords who bent the knee to me bent the knee to a Stark, not to a Targaryen, and the name matters more than I wish it did. It does, Jon says. I think there are people who would follow a Targaryen with a stronger claim to the Iron Throne than Joffrey had, if that Targaryen was also Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, or Warden of the North, or something that put a shape around it. And I think the thing coming from the North doesn't care about any of this, which means we need to deal with it before anyone else dies for a throne. Jon looks at him. You've been thinking about this for a while. I've had nothing else to do at night for 3 weeks. Jon almost smiles. Not quite, but close. What do you need from me? Robb turns to face him fully. I need you to be what you are. I need everyone to know what you are. I need that to mean something before it gets used against us by someone who figures it out on their own. He pauses. And I need you to go back north eventually, because I cannot go, and someone has to. I know, Jon says. I've known since Greywater Watch. They stand there a moment longer. Down in the yard, Ghost has gotten up and stretched, and is pacing the edge of the wall with the easy restlessness of a wolf in daylight, white against the grey stone, impossible to look at and look away from at the same time. Father knew, Robb says. He knew when he wrote it. He knew the name would matter, and he wrote it anyway. He made a promise, Jon says, at the Tower of Joy, or after. Howland Reed was there. He made a promise to a dying woman, and he kept it. And then he put it in a will because he knew that keeping a secret and keeping a promise are not always the same thing. Robb is quiet for a moment. What did she ask him to do? Keep me safe. Keep me alive. Jon pauses. Name me. He gave me his name. 15 years. And he never told anyone, because telling anyone was the dangerous thing, and the dangerous thing was the thing he wouldn't do. He did it in the end. He did it in the end, Jon says, when the end was what it was. The morning has gotten lighter. The sun is fully above the bay now, the winter sun, and the light falls on the city in long pale lines, and the fires are going out one by one, and somewhere below a bell is ringing, which in this city means almost anything, and Robb and Jon stand on the walls of the Red Keep and look out at all of it. Ned Stark is dead. He has been dead since the Sept of Baelor, which feels like a different world ago. He died in the dust while his daughter watched, and his wife did not know yet, and his elder son was crossing the neck, and his younger son was at the wall, and the document he had written in his cell had not yet begun its long, slow work on the world. It is doing its work now. It is in the things that have been said, and the things that have been decided, and the choices that are coming, not all of them made yet. Not all of them easy. It is in the letter that Robb carries still in his jacket, worn soft at the folds now, handled so many times the parchment has the quality of old cloth. It is in the name that 2 young men standing on a wall are only beginning to understand the weight of. A man does not write that way in despair. A man does not write that way in confusion or grief. A man writes that way when he is keeping a promise. All right, Jon says at last. Robb nods. All right. They go down from the wall together, into the yard, into the work that is waiting, and Ghost follows them,